Hi, Dave from Informed American here, letting you know that you don't have to be subject to the two-party stranglehold on American politics. There is a choice, and one of those choices is Green Party presidential candidate Howie Hawkins, who sat down with me just a bit ago to discuss his campaign and his platform. Now, Informed American doesn't endorse political candidates, but we do like to have candidates on like Howie Hawkins so that you can become informed Americans on the issues and the choices before you. So with that, let's go ahead and shoot to the interview. Hi, Dave from Informed American here with Green Party presidential candidate Howie Hawkins. Howie, thank you so much for taking time out of what I'm sure is a very, very busy schedule to talk to me and all of our viewers.
Oh, it's no problem. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Howie, for those who may not know you, would you mind giving a little bit of a brief introduction about who you are, what you've done over the years, and why you are running for president of the United States?
Sure. I'm a retired Teamster. Before that, I worked in construction, but I've been an activist since I was a teenager coming up in the Fiscal Bay Area. Mm-hmm. Civil rights, Vietnam War movement, the early ecology movement. And back then, I concluded early that we need another party. The Democrats and Republicans in 1964, Reagan was campaigning against fair housing, get a new law that had just passed, repealed by referendum in California, which they did. And the Democrats sat the segregationists from Mississippi instead of the Freedom Democrats that the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee had organized. So I was asking, where's my party? Uh-huh. So I've been looking for a party that's committed to democratic socialism, participatory democracy, and ecology since then. And, was involved in supporting third-party efforts, Peace and Freedom in 68, the People's Party 72, 76, the Citizens Party in 1980, and got involved in the first National Green Party organizing meeting in 1984. Been involved in that ever since. And I ran 3 times for governor of New York as the Green Party candidate, each time getting enough votes to get us a ballot line. And in 2014, I got 5% in a year when Governor Cuomo wanted to run up the vote to get ready to run for president. Uh-huh. Get more than his father Mario ever got, more than he got when he was first elected in 2010, and he got less. And we're sitting there with 5%. He couldn't take us for granted. Yeah. And he adopted several of our demands that he had never supported before, including a $15 minimum wage, a ban on fracking, and a millionaire's tax. So that's what we're in it for, to move the debate and make some changes.
Yeah. So, and you mentioned the struggle of maybe not having a voice. I think a lot of Americans feel like they're not being represented. They feel like that the things that they've wanted maybe for years, and even things that I'm sure things that are near and dear to your heart, that polling has indicated that people have wanted, that both parties could not find a way to get the people what they want. I mean, let's talk about the stranglehold that the two-party system has. I mean, let's talk about the importance of breaking from this two-party mold that we're in.
Well, if you look through American history, it's third parties that have brought issues to the fore that were being ignored. Mm-hmm. Going back to the Liberty Party, the Whigs and the Democrats were compromising on slavery. The Liberty Party said we want to abolish it. And that became an issue. They started it in about 1840 and evolved into what became the Republican Party, and the first and only third party to become a major party in American history. But you go through the populist parties, the Greenback Labor Party, the People's Party, the Socialist Party in the early part of the 20th century. And a lot of the issues they brought forward subsequently were adopted. And we've experienced the same thing in the Green Party. I mean, things we've been talking about for decades are now very lively debates in the national debate, like Medicare for All and a Green New Deal. I was the first candidate to campaign for that when I ran for governor in 2010. Now it's a term of discussion, although the Democrats took our signature issue, took the brand and watered down the content. So that's one reason I'm running, to get back to the full strength Green New Deal.
Excellent. Now, there is a focus, since we're in, the stakes seem to be very high maybe particularly for the presidential election cycle, and there's a focus on winning right now. It's that our candidate has to win. And some would say, with all due respect, that a vote for Howie Hawkins is a vote for President Trump, because it may be someone who would have instead voted for Joe Biden. Or on the other side, a vote for a Joe Jorgensen of the Libertarian Party is a vote for Biden, because those people might be potentially Trump-leaning people. Well, what's your response to that kind of that line of thinking, that the sort of immediacy, rather than maybe thinking a little bit further?
Well, people need to go back to elementary school and remember the little logical lessons they are given, like this basket's for apples, this basket's for peaches, this basket's for oranges.
Uh-huh.
A vote for the Green Party is not a vote for Trump. It's a vote for the Green Party and against Trump. So that's number one. Number two is, if you're for, say, Medicare for all, and you vote for Joe Biden, who's opposed to it, you get lost in the sauce. Nobody knows you're for Medicare for all. You silenced your voice.
Mm-hmm.
So the other thing is, we've been giving the Democrats the solution to the spoiler problem, and that's a ranked choice national popular vote for president. We've been giving that to them since Ralph Nader ran in 2000. And instead of embracing that and solving the problem, they've decided they're going to try to keep the Green Party off the ballot. And, we got a situation now where the Republicans are, they've got 17 million people purged from the voter rolls. They're not putting enough polling places in minority neighborhoods. Trump's trying to destroy the Postal Service now, and the possibility of mail-in ballots. Democrats got bigger problems than the Green Party. They need to fight the Republicans, and that's one of our beefs with them.
Yeah,
they are not effective at fighting the Republicans. They tend to accommodate them. Goes back to Clinton. He called it triangulation.
And I think this happens. So you get they flirt with you. In other words, they'll say, "Oh yeah, we'll do this sort of a thing." And I think then it gets to the part. I mean, I think maybe on the right is sort of the same thing. That maybe I don't know. I'm thinking just the most recent one was a libertarian. Maybe Republicans will talk about libertarian things, but then in the end of the day, they just kind of go back to this duopoly, this corporate thing. And then on the left hand side, maybe something like a Medicare for all, they'll flirt with it. Maybe Biden is flirting with it a little bit. And as you mentioned, the Green New Deal. I know he has a climate plan that. It sort of has some of the same principles of what a Green New Deal might look like, but doesn't nearly go far enough, and certainly not with the amount of investment, right? So are these parties just stringing us along, Howie, just to then change their minds once they get elected?
Well, they let progressives give speeches in the Democratic Party, Bernie Sanders, AOC, but when it comes time to make decisions, it's the corporate Democrats. And Biden has nothing like a Green New Deal. He wants to double down on oil and gas fracking, and his excuse is we're going to have carbon capture and sequestration,
right?
A technology that's not economical. He's not going to do that. And he wants to subsidize nuclear power, the most unsuccessful industrial enterprise in the post-World War II period. They can't operate now without subsidies. We're subsidizing them in New York. The industry bribed politicians, apparently, in Ohio and Illinois to get subsidies. This just came out in the last couple of weeks. This industry is dirty, dangerous, and uneconomical. The levelized cost of nuclear power is 2 or 3 times higher than solar and wind. So it's a waste of money and a diversion from a real climate plan. So I don't think Joe Biden should get any credit for what he has and be able to call it a Green New Deal. It's anything but.
Great. Let's talk about something topical in the news. Republicans and Democrats stalled in Congress for further economic relief that the country's going through with the COVID-19 pandemic. And then the president has come out with 4 executive orders of questionable legality. So Washington's in a mess. Howie, what is your plan to get the economy back going after dealing with this pandemic, to get the economy started again?
Well, we need immediate relief. The enhanced unemployment benefit of $600 a week should continue. Mm-hmm. COVID patients should have access to Medicare. I mean, billing sometimes goes over $1 million for treatment. It's changes your whole life. We need to protect the Postal Service. We need to give money to state and local governments. They're shutting down all kinds of services. There's a whole lot of immediate relief, but I think long-term, our Green New Deal is what needs to be done. Our Green New Deal is a 10-year, $27.5 trillion program to rebuild all productive systems for zero to negative greenhouse gas emissions and 100% clean energy in a decade by 2030. That's a massive economic stimulus.
Yeah.
We budgeted it out and found out, looking at the existing industries, it would create 38 million jobs. Those are the jobs we need right now. And both major parties rely on private enterprise alone to get us out of these economic holes. And look how long it took us that way to get out of the hole from the Great Recession. We're really still not, we're about 7% under our productive capacity still. And that's like $70,000 per person, or $7,000 a year, or $70,000 per person over the last decade. So we think we need the Green New Deal now for economic recovery as well as climate recovery.
Well, it's interesting because so you're talking long term. We're talking we've got a problem, and here, I mean, the fix. Not only is it a fix for now, but it's a fix for longer term. And something that's interesting to me, at least, I would think in this environment, such an idea doesn't sound so far fetched. And what I mean by that is we've seen unprecedented amounts of stimulus coming from Congress. I believe the last bill was $2.5 trillion or something. So the money itself, we're spending so much now. And I mean, I look at your plan, it's, I believe, 42 trillion over 10 years. I mean, it sounds like a huge number, but I think we're proving that maybe this tight fiscal idea, it's a bit of a fiction, isn't it? And we can actually afford these things that may have seemed unthinkable a couple of years ago. What do you make of that?
Well, yeah, we're a sovereign monetary power. Congress has the power to coin money. You don't have to tax and collect the money before you spend it. Mm-hmm. So these are investments that need to be made now. And our Green New Deal would pay for itself because a lot of this is done through the public sector. So we're talking about public energy, transportation, and in manufacturing. So you're going to have people paying for the electricity from public energy, public transportation. And we want to lease these Green New Deal factories to worker cooperatives. So all these fees come in, and like any business, you invest and borrow at first, and then the revenues come in and you cover your costs. So we increase productive capacity, and then we have more wealth with which to cover the original investment.
Right.
So I think that's the way we need to look at it. We have a tendency to look at the federal government like it's a household budget.
Right.
Or even a state government budget where you have to balance it. But it's different at the federal level because it's a sovereign monetary power. It can create the money it needs to spend right now to get the economy going and expand our wealth and income.
Yep, and that has certainly proven itself over the last, certainly with what the Federal Reserve is doing and what Congress is doing. Howie, there's a tweet of yours, I think it was from yesterday or maybe the day before, that kind of gave me a chuckle. This is on the subject of debates. I think you mentioned this earlier. You said, #let Howie debate. Trump and Biden don't want to debate each other, and they sure as hell don't want to debate someone who brings the life and death issues of the working class is facing to the stage. #open the debates. Howie, why won't the Commission on Presidential Debates allow candidates like yourself and Joe Jorgensen take the stage to debate Trump and Biden?
Well, it sounds like a government agency, the Commission on Presidential Debates. But in fact, it's a wholly owned subsidiary, jointly owned by the Democrats and Republicans.
Right.
For the purpose of keeping everybody else out. So that's why those debates we will not be in. But I will get in them on, I'll get on Zoom and I'll comment, live as they debate, if they debate.
Yeah.
I'm ready to debate both Biden and Trump, but I'm not sure they're ready to debate me.
I don't think they are. And I think it's a shame. I would love to see you, if there is going to be a stage, I would love to see you get up there and talk to them, because there are people that believe in these things. And I think to your point, when the parties aren't reacting to the people, it's important to have a voice out there that can move them. Howie, this morning there was news out of Russia about a potential COVID-19 vaccine, and people are certainly skeptical of that. But we believe that one probably, if we're successful enough of developing one in Europe or the United States, one that is maybe deemed safe. What are your thoughts on a COVID-19 vaccine? Would you support, say, a national mandate on something like that? Would you tell everyone? Would you encourage, or maybe again mandate that all Americans take this vaccine if one is deemed safe?
Yeah, I support vaccines. I don't support mandatory vaccinations. I think that gets to encroach on First Amendment freedom of thought, freedom of religion, and we need to do it by education. I mean, I took the polio vaccination in the 50s, and I knew kids that had polio. And, education got the job done. And I think, there's a lot of anti-vaxxers out there who are spreading a lot of misinformation. That is a problem. So we need a strong public education program.
Yeah.
As far as whether the Russians have a vaccination, I mean, I think the number they're testing it on 30,000 people.
Right.
Normally, you test it on 3 million to see if there are bad side effects. So, look, what we do know works is a serious test, contact trace, and isolate program to suppress community spread of the virus, and then we can go back to work and to school. And the two governing parties in this country, I think, are presiding over a failed state.
Yeah.
Trump gave up. He's a loser. COVID won. He doesn't really care about us. But I'm mad at Biden now because he lives within commuter distance of the White House press corps. He could command their attention at news conferences like Governor Cuomo in New York did early on in the pandemic, get on cable news and pound away at what we need, provide direction, show leadership. And instead he seems content to let, Trump hang himself with his own stupidities. But tens of thousands of people are dying right now. And Biden has the platform and he's not using it. So I say he's complicit in those deaths with Trump.
And some would say that Biden may not be capable of going up there every single day and taking questions with reporters, and so that remains to be seen while he's doing the basement strategy, as you had alluded to. Something else interesting. I'd like to get your thoughts on this. Gun sales have skyrocketed over the country, around the country this summer. I believe that the numbers in July were like an increase of 133%. And a lot of this is in reaction to the civil unrest that's been going on around the country since late May. Just sort of a two-parter, which is, what would you say to those who are out there buying guns because they don't feel safe in their communities for a variety of reasons? And what is your stance on the Second Amendment? Do you stand for status quo, more restrictions on guns, or less?
Well, I'm happy to work within the framework of the Heller decision, which said people have a right to bear arms if they're law-abiding. But it also said that the public has the right to regulate gun ownership in the interest of public safety.
Yeah. And
I think what that means today is universal background checks, maybe some mandates for safe storage of your weapons. And as a former Marine, I don't want to see military assault weapons on the street. I think we should have a buyback program. A crazy person can kill too many people too fast with those weapons. You don't need them, to defend your home or your person. Right. Or to go hunting. So that's pretty much where I stand. Now, I kind of smile at the people going out and, buying more ammo and weapons.
Okay.
When I worked at UPS unloading trucks, every time the Democrats would win the presidency, there'd be a big, increase in the rifles and ammo that we were unloading on those trucks.
Right.
Because the Republicans would say, oh, they're coming to get your guns, which they weren't. And the other irony is when Trump got elected, suddenly nobody was buying ammo again. I mean, it's so ironic. I think it undermined, the gun manufacturers that, tended to support Trump.
Yeah.
So, I think people need to be rational about it. What do you really need? And, don't impulse buying, particularly for weapons, is probably not a good idea.
Yeah, no, I agree. Back to COVID just briefly here. Where do you stand on schools reopening around the country? There was a no questions act, no way can we open up schools. But then recently, I believe news out of New York, I think Governor Cuomo and Senator Schumer have now kind of changed their position a little bit, because it turns out, a lot of people have jobs and not all of them can work from home. And there's the issue of childcare and, of course, children's education. But, of course, we still have a pandemic going on. So what are your thoughts on schools opening in the fall?
Well, I think they should be opened up in following public health guidelines. Now, what they're saying is when the infection rate is 5% or greater, you shouldn't open up, because then you're going to have too much community spread. You get below that, then you can open up if you provide the proper public health protections, masking, social distancing, and a high attention to sanitation, both your hands and the things people are touching. And then there are other things schools, and there should be federal money to help them do this, ventilation. I did take one plane flight during this pandemic, and they were bragging that every 2 or 3 minutes the air filtration system cleans out all the viruses.
Uh-huh.
I hope that was true. I didn't.
Yeah, I know.
But
let's hope they weren't just saying that, right?
Yeah, better ventilation, and then things like plexiglass barriers between desks, which I've seen in pictures in Asia and Europe.
Uh-huh.
So I think it can be done, but it's got to be done according to public health guidelines. I mean, the school down in Georgia where, that viral picture went around, all the kids crowded together without masks.
Mm-hmm.
And then I heard one high school had like 424 students test positive after they opened up. They had to shut it back down. Yeah. So you got to do it the right way, and we want to do it. But until we have a proper test, trace, and quarantine program, we're not going to suppress the virus, and we're not going to be able to go back to work or to school safely.
Yeah. Great perspective there. Howie, I was looking through your platform, and I'm sure it's there. I just didn't see it. Where do you stand on trade? That was a big issue in 2016. It continued to be. It continues to be an issue in terms of globalization, domestic production. Of course, Trump levied tariffs on China and on Europe, a couple of other countries. This idea that outsourcing jobs to China—that's obviously the big one. Where does the Green Party stand on trade and say domestic production?
Well, we want these trade agreements renegotiated to make them fair trade agreements, not corporate managed trade agreements. Because what we have now is agreements that enable corporations to pit workers in one country off against another and to attack the sovereignty of countries to regulate their labor standards, their environmental and consumer protections. And when those disputes are adjudicated, they're in secretive trade tribunals that only corporations in the state, the nation states have access to, not labor, not the public. And then when we get decisions, we often don't see the rationale. We just get what you're supposed to do.
Yeah. So
this is an anti-democratic form of economic regulation. So we need to renegotiate them so they're designed to level up standards on both sides of borders. And I think another thing, in order to prevent the outsourcing of jobs, is we need to promote worker cooperatives and public enterprises where the workers own their own jobs. We're not going to move to Mexico or China to pay ourselves less.
Yeah.
And so, economic democracy is a good thing. And the other thing I would say, and this is part of our Green New Deal, we need to have diversified regional economies or continental economies. There are a lot of things that every, continent should be able to produce internally without having to, outsource it to China or Mexico or somewhere. And those economies are more resilient when they're diverse. If you're, if you're like a one company town, then you're dependent on that one company. And that can happen to nations as well. And we're vulnerable now because our manufacturing is so hollowed out. We hardly have a machine tool industry left.
Yeah.
If you want to build intermediate machinery or consumer goods machinery, you need a machine tool industry. We want to build solar panels or high-speed rail. We got to contract out to Germany or China. We should have that manufacturing here in the United States. So we need an industrial policy, which is in our Green New Deal, and we want new manufacturing that is clean. So, for example, cement, Portland cement, they put calcium carbonate in there to harden the cement. The calcium hardens it, but the carbonate goes into the atmosphere. That accounts for 5% of the world's carbon footprint.
Interesting.
There are other ways of making cement, so we need new cement factories. Or steel, instead of waiting for the coke ovens to wear out, we should use electric arc furnaces, which the industry is already moving toward, but it's going to take several decades to wear out those coke ovens, and we need to move faster than that.
It's interesting the way both parties essentially supported this free trade dogma, globalization, and we have seen pushback for it, which makes me think, Howie, Have you made any have you made any strange political bedfellows along the way? Maybe we've seen sort of a rise of a more populist right, more sort of economic nationalism, which might jive with some of the things you and I were just discussing. Maybe that part of the wing. It's not from the Republican from corporate Republicans, but certainly you've seen those voices come out. So have you been able to find common ground with maybe people like that, or wherever across the political spectrum, besides the head honchos that from the two major parties?
Not so much on economic nationalism, because that tends to scapegoat workers in other countries and really doesn't get at the corporate power that is pitting us against each other. But on issues like civil liberties and mass surveillance, we and the libertarians are on the same page there. On drug policy reform, legalizing marijuana and decriminalizing hard drugs and treating them as a health problem, not a criminal problem, and reducing the harm they cause, and dealing with this opioid epidemic. So people who are addicted can get treatment rather than being worried about going to jail. Foreign policy, we are opposed to these regime change wars and having a global military empire, and so are the libertarians. So there's a lot of common ground there, for sure. And then there are issues that people call themselves conservatives, but they support a raise in the minimum wage.
Yeah.
They support the rich paying more taxes. A lot of them support Medicare for all. And so we find common ground with people like that who may self-label themselves as conservatives, but when we get down to, I've worked with members of the Conservative Party in New York on single power and public power. A publicly owned municipal utility instead of an investor-owned utility called National Grid, or as the people here call it, National Greed.
Right. It's funny because, besides, besides from theory, that is interesting. Like, what conservative person says, no, I'd rather pay $2,000 in insurance premiums. I'd rather go bankrupt on paying medical bills. I'd rather not be able to afford childcare as I slave away at my job for 40 plus hours. That always does strike me as people that are certainly ripe for your message, who it does at some point just seem common sense. Why would I continue this just for some political dogma? Very interesting. All right, I know your time is short here, so I've got just a couple of really quick questions for you. I wanted to have you mention your vice presidential running mate, Angela Walker. Why did you choose her before we get out of here?
Well, because I know her and I know she'd make a good teammate. That's the most important thing. I've known her since 2014 when she was running for sheriff of Milwaukee County as an independent socialist against Dave Walker, who people know on Fox News as the black sheriff wearing a cowboy hat, who's a big Trump fan, who said as sheriff, don't call 911, get a gun. Okay. So she said, no, we're going to fight poverty, fight crime by fighting poverty. Right. She got 20% of the vote. So we were on a panel together that year. I was running for governor about independent politics. And her background was she was a transit bus driver in Milwaukee and became the legislative director of her union when she got her union involved in the Wisconsin uprising against Scott Walker's effort to eliminate collective bargaining rights for public employees. And then she got them involved in the Occupy movement. And she's now a dump truck driver. She's driving a dump truck as we speak down in Florence, South Carolina. So, I'm a retired Teamster, so we're two workers for the White House. We think we need a better class of people up in there than corporate crooks and flunkies. So, and she's a great speaker. She's a great messenger for the campaign and the Green Party. And she was the first person I asked. She was the top of my list.
That's great.
The campaign was saying, ask this personality, ask that personality. And I said, I don't know those people. And the personalities weren't that big anyway. So Angela is a great person, and I'm glad she said yes.
Great. So you have a true blue collar ticket. So that's encouraging. Second to last question, where do you stand on mail-in voting? You mentioned this earlier, but I just wanted to have you just address this. There's some concerns, Howie, on fraud. There's concerns on high rejection rates, and another concern that sometimes the ballots may not even make their destination, particularly as states are scrambling to try to come up with a solution for November. Where do you stand on mail-in ballots?
Well, the federal government should make sure the mail-in ballots are available to everybody who wants to use it, and make sure the Postal Service is functioning at a high level so that there's no problem there. And then the standards for counting, that's where people got to watch them count. And we have a right to do that. And that's not just Democrats and Republicans, it's Greens. I've been telling Greens, you better watch out because Trump is trying to delegitimize this election because it looks like he's going to lose. And God knows what he's going to do if that happens. So I'm for that. And the problem of fraud, I mean, they've had mail-in ballots. It's 100% in Colorado and Oregon, and they haven't had a problem of fraud. It's very easy to catch fraud in a mail-in ballot. You have ways of identifying a voter. We've done it in our unions. We've done it in a lot of organizations. So that shouldn't be a problem. And so I'm for it, particularly in this pandemic, so we can have an election.
Yep.
The older people that tend to be the polling station workers are not coming out because they're afraid of getting the virus. So we may have less polling places than we need. That creates lines and people may not get to vote. So we need mail-in ballots to have an election that everybody can participate in.
Yep, agree 100%. Howie, ballot access is a big issue for the Green Party. Talk about where you are now and where you need to be, and if people want to help you get on the ballots in their states, what can they do?
Well, go to my webpage, howiehawkins.us, and click on the tab that says Ballot Access. And on there, there's a tab or link you can click to volunteer. So we're on, I think, 32 states now, although the Democrats have challenged our petitions in 3 or 4 of them.
Trying to keep you down, Howie.
Yeah, and party suppression is part of voter suppression.
Yep.
61% of Jill Stein's voters, according to exit polls in 2016, said they wouldn't have come out to vote if she wasn't on the ballot. So 100 million people didn't vote. And a lot of them, they tend to be working class, people of color, younger people. And a lot of them are not apathetic, they're alienated.
Right.
They don't like what they're hearing from the two parties because the two parties aren't speaking to them. So we should have more options on the ballot so everybody will feel they have something to vote for. We would like to see a federal standard for ballot access, like most countries have, in federal elections. A reasonable percentage, say, of the last gubernatorial race in the district. So, it's off the charts. In this country, you got to get thousands of signatures to run as an independent for Congress.
Crazy.
It's over 20,000 in Illinois, over 30,000 in Georgia, over 40,000 in Alabama. That's why they don't have third-party candidates for Congress in those states. If you want to run as an independent for the House of Commons in England or the UK, it's 10 signatures.
That's a lot easier. Well, and the thing is, too, that people may not know about you, and the whole point of campaigning is so people can know about you. It's almost like a catch-22 here. You already have to have support before you've even campaigned. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So everyone can go to howiehawkins.us if they want to learn out more about your campaign or support you, or, of course, to help you get on the ballot. Howie, final question. Why should Americans vote Howie Hawkins and Angela Walker?
Well, if you're a progressive or a socialist, there's a whole new group of socialists, young people particularly, or anybody who supports Medicare for all, a Green New Deal, taxing the rich, student and medical debt relief, an economic bill of rights that includes a guaranteed minimum income above poverty, raising Social Security benefits. We want to double them so every senior has a secure retirement. If you're for those things, you should vote for us and make the politicians come to you. Don't silence your voice. If you settle for Biden as a progressive and you want Medicare for all, you get lost in the sauce. They don't know you're for Medicare for all.
Yeah.
You just affirmed Joe Biden, who's against Medicare for all. Mm-hmm. And so you silence your voice. You've given away your power. So it's better to vote for what you want and maybe not get it right away than to vote for what you don't want and get it right away.
Absolutely. Howie, thank you so much for talking to me. Very interesting conversation. A lot of really good ideas. I support your bid, particularly just for the idea of expanding choices for all Americans. I would love for there to be 3 parties, 4 parties, 5 parties, whatever, so long as it means that Americans feel like they have a voice. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I enjoyed the conversation.
Well, that is my chat with Howie Hawkins. It was really great talking sort of some higher level philosophical issues about where he stands on bigger picture stuff, but also drilling down to some of the issues of the day. Howie Hawkins strikes me as nothing but earnest and committed to his cause and that of the Green Party platform. And something that struck me that I mentioned there near the end that I'm still kind of thinking about is this middle class and blue collar background that Howie has, and as well as his vice presidential running mate, Angela Walker. So I find that to me, that gives them more credibility in my mind. So that was great to see. And I wish him the best of luck in November, as I said to him on our way out. And it was great to talk to him because it is a reminder and something for all of us to keep in mind that you don't have to choose Republicans and Democrats. And in fact, as Howie argued, withholding your vote from those two parties may be the most powerful thing you can do when you go out to vote. And remember, November 3rd, that is the day to make your voice heard. You don't have to be subject to the two-party duopoly that runs our political system. Maybe the only way of making change is to go out there and vote for a third or fourth party candidate. Well, if you enjoyed this video, I would be honored if you would hit the like button and also subscribe to our channel. And then after that, head on over to informedamerican.com, where you can get real smart news in your inbox every single day. Thanks so much for watching.